Hello, and welcome to this latest episode of the Royal St. Lawrence Yacht Club podcast. My name is Norman Pearl, and I will be your host. Our topic today is marine surveys and surveyors, and with us to talk about this is Mr. Eddy Assaf, accredited marine surveyor. Good morning, Mr. Assaf, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, first, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be a marine surveyor?
Actually, it started back, I've always been a little bit in the mechanical side of the business. And then I fell in love and went sailing one time and said, well, this is for me. This is what I want to do. And I became an active sailor at that point. Back in the early 90s, I bought a 43-foot catamaran and started renovating it and realized I was making a lot of mistakes according to standards. A marine surveyor who was here in Quebec filled me in and set me straight and told me what I had to do and what not to do. So this gentleman did that for us, and we landed up finishing in the catamaran, and then I hired another marine surveyor to do the final survey before launching the boat for insurance reasons. And he came along and walked around my 43-foot catamaran for about, I guess, an hour and a half and charged me a substantial amount of money back in the early 90s. And I said to myself, geez, I got to do this. So after sailing for about 7 years with my boat and meeting a few other people in Florida working on doing marine surveying in Florida. So in 2001, I registered myself at the Chapman School of Seamanship and took the Marine Surveyors course there and took the Professional Mariners Training course at the same time. Came back here and decided to set up my business here and started marine surveying in early of 2002. And the marine surveying course is a really great course. It tells you how to structure your business. It tells you what to look for. It basically teaches you that you got to go through a boat the way you're supposed to go through a boat, or else you can never come up to a proper summary of what's going on.
Oh, great. So how would you define what really is a marine survey?
All right. A marine survey is actually, if you can think about it, it is really a picture in time. It's where a surveyor is supposed to go aboard your vessel and inspect the vessel, all its equipment, do a thorough inspection of the hull, and the decks, all the surfaces for humidity, delamination. We're supposed to verify all electrical installation, all plumbing installations, and basically come out with a fair market value for that vessel and the condition that it's in, and state the condition that it's in. And by there also having to add recommendations to build or bring the boat back up to standards.
And what standards would those be?
Here in Canada, we use TP 1332. Which is all part of the Canadian Shipping Act, which is the law. 1332 is a construction standard. For safety, we use TP 511, which is the boat safety standards that everybody gets, that little booklet that tells you need this amount of fire extinguisher, vest, so on and so forth. And most now, and especially since Transport Canada has kind of affiliated themselves with American Boat and Yacht Council, the standards, and these we're talking about construction standards, have changed drastically since about 2 years ago.
The standards that apply to a boat, would they be the same for any boat that's surveyed, or does it pertain to the boat as of the date it was built?
Absolutely. You're supposed to use the standards that are dated on at the time this boat was constructed, except for part of our job is to use a little bit of common sense. A lot of the stuff that was created in the 1980s and the 1990s have much changed. It's not the same game anymore. And we have to apply a lot of the newer standards just simply to make the boat safer. And that's it. I mean, you got to understand some of the standards that we apply, and often people will get mad at us because, we're actually applying smoke detectors and CO2 detectors, and make sure you have the right fire extinguishers on board. A lot of people don't like the idea of having to spend that money. But if you save one life out of the whole deal, then you're doing your job. And that's basically what our job is.
So who or what qualifications does it take to be a surveyor? You've explained your own, but are all surveyors created equal?
It is getting better. We're getting to the point where we're able to get a lot of the surveyors now to actually join professional organizations, such as SAMS here in Quebec, IMAC. And these organizations demand a certain amount from each and every surveyor. So you have to do your continuous education every year. Here in Quebec, unfortunately, right now, most surveyors don't really need any kind of accreditation, except for the last 7 or 8 years, me for the Society of Accredited Marine Surveyors, and another fellow surveyor of mine, Gilles, for Association des inspecteurs maritimes agréés du Québec. Went and saw the insurance company and said, no, listen, this is what we do. And this is what these guys have to be to become a surveyor in our organization. And we kind of proved that, they have to go through an education process. They have to do a certain amount of time as an apprentice before becoming an accredited marine surveyor. So basically, this is what we're trying to organize with the insurance companies. And now they're at the point where they're demanding that most of their surveyors either be a SAMS, NAMS, or an IMAC member, which is really, really good. It gives us the recognition that we needed, and it makes sure that the surveyors in that category all have to operate in the same fashion. We all have this thing called recommended survey report content, which is basically everything that should be in a survey report. And the ones who don't do it while they're in training will get not penalized, but scolded. And if it's not done right by the time they graduate, they won't graduate. It's mandatory. But it basically makes you have to go through the boat properly. And this is what we would like for every surveyor to do.
Okay, so when you give a survey report to a boat owner, does that mean someone else that reviews your report?
Every surveyor, before becoming actually accredited, and for those who are accredited and want to have it done, have to send a survey report every annual to have reviewed by a review committee.
So when we're hiring a surveyor, we should look for accreditation by, you said SAMS, or?
Yeah, SAMS. There's SAMS, which is Society of Accredited Marine Surveyors. There is IMAC, which is the Quebec organization, which is Association des inspecteurs maritimes agréés du Québec. And there's NAMS, National Association of Marine Surveyors, which is them and SAMS, I believe, are the oldest ones. And the latest one is IIMS, International Institute of Marine Surveyors. And they are very strong in Europe, and they are starting to take over the west coast of Canada. They do offer an awful lot of online courses and stuff for people to get into. Those are the four major. There are others, but those are the four major ones right now.
So you've touched on what is in a marine survey. Are there different kind of surveys? Can a survey be for insurance, evaluation, or is a survey a survey?
Here in Canada, it is not the same in the United States. We do have here what they call a condition and value survey. In 2003, the Supreme Court of Canada declared that no matter what name you want to give your survey, the court is going to look at it as a condition and value survey, which means a complete survey. So the insurance, people say, well, I just need a survey for my insurance. For me, and I'm speaking for myself, this is not all surveyors, I only do a boat one way, and that's from head to toe. Here, unfortunately, sometimes it's very hard in the springtime. I mean, we can't have batteries installed sometimes. We don't have shore power. Most of the times it's like, really spring and people are rushed because they have a short period amount of time to prepare the boats and put them and launch them. When somebody who wants to buy a boat, I will do a condition and value survey for purchase. And basically it's the same thing as the other one, but I like to go into more detail on the equipment and how the equipment is running. So, I'll power up the fridges. I'll wait till they get cold. I want to make sure they're running okay. And pretty much every system inside the boat we like to make run. And there's damage appraisal, which I only do for insurance companies. Mm-hmm. And that's when the insurance company is going to hire me to do damage appraisal. And my main job there is to assess damages and control costs. We do sometimes consultations. That we do quite a bit of consultation for people who are, for some people, they're actually smart enough to get the information before starting to do the work. But we'll go on site and we'll tell them what has to be done and how it has to be done according to the standards. And those are services that are offered most of the times by most surveyors.
Okay. Is a survey different for, say, a sailboat versus a powerboat?
The survey itself is very different. The process of doing it is the same. Mm-hmm. It's just they don't have the same components, especially in the hull. So it's a little bit more lengthy to do a powerboat. With the amount of stringers that you have inside of there and the compartments you have, the engine, it's not the same configuration at all as a sailboat. So it's a little bit different to do. So if you were to take two boats of the same size, 45 feet, and a powerboat at 45 feet and a sailboat at 45 feet, they will take the same amount of time to do. It's just the process and the way they're done are a little bit different. It's not the same construction. One of them is made to be pushed with power, and the other one is made to be pushed with wind. And it's not the same power to torque ratio. So that's where on the power boat you have to be a little bit more careful, especially on the structural part.
And the rigging for a sailboat?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything in a survey is basically the boat from head to toe. That includes the construction of the boat and comments on any defaults it has in its construction or in the surfaces, in humidity, to make sure that all the electrical is up to standards, nothing sloppy, nothing could be a fire hazard. It is basically, like I say, it's going through a boat, and we want to check all the plumbing, we want to check all the motors, we want to make sure everything works that we can. And that will depend on what kind of survey you're doing, if you're doing one on the hard, if you're doing one in the water, if you're doing a sea trial or whatever, which as far as I'm concerned is the only complete survey to have done, but not really necessary for insurance renewal. You know, but if you're going to buy a boat, I think it's the only way to have a survey done.
With a sea trial?
Yeah. Most of the times for a client who wants to buy a boat, I prefer to do the hull while it's been on the hard for a couple of days. All the surfaces are dry. Mm-hmm. I can do my wetted surface, my freeboards properly. Then we launch the boat, we finish the inspection in the water, make sure there's no leakage, we can start the engines, we can start generators, we can make air conditioners work, we can make everything work, and then we go and do a sea trial. And the sea trial is very, very important. People understand that we don't helm the boat. It's to see how the boat performs while we're underway. And I have a list of maneuvers that we have to have done to help me judge the condition of the boat and how it reacts under sea trial. And that is a complete survey. Here, unfortunately, 90% of the time we're doing surveys on the hard. We rarely have battery power. And on an insurance survey, if it's for the owner's boat, you're not really able to advise him properly because you really can't check the boat as well as if everything was available.
We need a longer boating season up here.
We need a longer boating season. We need the insurance company sometimes to put a little bit less stress because, most of the times it's like they send you a letter in January saying, okay, you need a survey this year.
Before launching.
Before launching, and always. And that's what causes the real big panic in April and May. And it's just a total nut house because everybody needs their boat done, but so it makes it for a very, very hectic schedule, very hard to manage.
Are there some common misconceptions about surveys or surveyors that you run into? I'm sure there are.
Yeah. You got to understand, we do what we call non-destructive surveying, which means we are not allowed to remove a screw. We are not allowed to open lock panels because any damages that could occur with that are our responsibility. We ask most of the times that power be installed because we're not allowed to hook battery cables onto a boat. We're not allowed to hook inshore power up to a boat. Because I don't know in this boat if there's a wire that's been working on or somebody has been working on something and there's live wires. So it's not for us to do sort of deal. People expect us to do that. I've gotten to clients where I've done to do a survey and a 22-foot boat, but it was hanging on one of these little electric hoists over the water and he's not there. So I said, well, your boat's not in the water. You can see the hull and everything fine, but who's going to put the boat in the water? He says, it's simple. You press the button and it'll launch and you can put it in the water. I said, well, no, I don't do that. He had to leave his work and he had to come to the dock and he hit the button and the front strap let go. And the nose of the boat fell into the water. And some people, okay, he's not going to be able to survey. Is the boat ready for a survey? They say, yeah. And I get in there and I open the cabin and the cabin is stuffed to the cabin door. The boat is supposed to be ready. And if it is, we're supposed to do everything in a due process and make sure we cover the boat as well as we can. And that's basically our job, Mm-hmm. And these are a lot of things and some of the biggest problems we have with clients. They expect us to do like the 9 yards. The boat's still wrapped. Oh, well, you can just cut it off and take it off and stuff it under the boat. No, I'm not going to unwrap your boat. If I scratch your hull with my knife, if the structure falls when I'm taking it off, I'm responsible for this because the second I get on your boat, I am responsible for everything that happens in that boat, And this is about the only misconception people have about surveyors. Some of us think that we do, mechanical surveys and do compression tests. And I don't know a surveyor that will do a marine survey and do a full mechanical survey. It's two departments. It's two different fields.
Okay, so for a survey, we should be prepared to have the boat uncovered, clean out all the stuff that we stored in it, have the batteries and have power. And if there's things to be opened, we should open them?
Actually, by standards, everything that I'm supposed to look at should be easily accessible. On some boats, they do put screws over, or a panel and screw it over. And I usually ask the owner to remove the screws. I have the drill, I have everything. I'll ask him to do it so I can, most of the times, either to see like basically gas tanks or something like that, things that are very important to see. What I like to tell most of my clients, the perfect way to have your boat surveyed is, let's pretend it's going in the water in 15 minutes. That boat's got to be ready. And sometimes we do it for certain clients. I mean, I've gone where I've gone 3 times to do a boat. I'll go and do it on the hard, the wetted surface, and then they'll launch it, and we'll do it in the water survey. And then the sea trial's only going to be a week later because there's still too many trees floating around the waterways. We're really not safe to take a boat out. So and then we'll do it in 3 stages. But it's the proper way to do a good survey. I have clients that do insurance renewal surveys and still want them done that way. A lot of people really like to keep on top of their boat and to keep it running and properly timed all the time. They like it when we do the moisture meters on the deck because, water or not, wherever we're going to make a hole on the deck is an access for water to come in. And if they keep the old notes, they can actually see if it's progressed or gone down or whatever. And when it's progressed, then they know they have to seal there, which is usually a suggestion we'll make in a report, to rebed certain areas to stop water from getting in.
And can you tell us what are some of the, strangest or what are the funniest things that you found in a survey without maybe getting, too identifiable?
Well, there's a few of them that have always stuck in the back of my mind. One of them decided he wanted to put a sun deck on this 28-foot bay liner. Anyways, I went to look at the boat. So this guy's idea of a 6-year-old bay liner, and to make a sun deck, the best way to do it was to cut 4-inch holes in 6 places in his cockpit floor and set 4x4 hemlock down in there as a post, and he used U-clamps through the freeboards to make it solid. Actually, one of the posts he put in there where he put the U-clamps in, the bolts were underneath the waterline. And he built his whole deck in treated wood. And I had to go and evaluate this, give the insurance company my opinion, which I knew it was going to be at the very, very beginning. And I couldn't understand for the love of me why this guy thought, he said, no, listen, I built these all the time. This is solid. This is never going to move, And I said, well, yeah, but it's just against all construction standard rules. So basically, I went there and I took a look at his whole thing and took all the pictures, and I told him, unfortunately, that it would have to come off. And on top of that, the holes in the hull and the holes in the cockpit floor would have to be repaired.
Marvelous.
Second one I did was last year, which was funny because it was a homemade houseboat. It was built with 45-gallon barrels tied to pallets that were nailed together, and the barrels were held together with rope. And then he put this like 12 by 12 structure on top of it with a wood stove to keep it warm. Anyways, I could just see the chimney and everything. And it is unbelievable what I've seen people do. That is taking it to an extreme. Our biggest problems in our business is improper propane installations, improper amplifier installations. People love those power amplifiers and they stick them in the engine compartments. And if you read the installation instructions, do not put where there are gas or fumes or explosive items. These are some of the nightmares that I've seen. I've seen pretty bad installations of propane where people don't realize that propane is just a little bomb waiting to blow up. Homemade rigging in the electrical wiring, where with my thermometer, they're just turning on lights and I can see the wires turning red. This is also some big problem for us on a lot of these home do-it-yourselfers, or even worse when we get, oh, my brother-in-law's an electrician. Yeah, but he knows building standards. He doesn't know marine standards. I did a boat last year, and I was really felt bad for the poor gentleman, but he had just renovated his 60-foot 1953 Catalina motorboat, and we did all the wiring except to use square D fuses and house wiring. And it was done 2 years ago, and I can't accept that because the standards go back almost 20 years ago saying that you can't do that. It was going to cost him close to about $90,000 to switch everything over. It's a little bit his fault. He didn't inform himself. They don't sell marine wiring because we want to sell marine wiring. It's important that it's a tin flexible wire. We can't use solid conductors. And this is another thing we see an awful lot. If I get a 1986 CNC, that in that time, we're built that way. And I'm not going to make the guy change it. It's been there for like 40 years. It's never had a problem. You know what I mean? We got to use a little bit of logic when we're being a surveyor too at the same time. And plus the standards at that time allowed it. So, but if somebody does a change or we see a change, and I often see some boats where they're 99% marine wiring, and then we can see the changes the owners do because they don't use the proper wiring, they don't use the proper clamping down, and so on and so forth. Then we have to make that call and make them change it. And since the last couple of years, we're getting a lot of people buying these things on Kijiji, and they're buying them sight unseen and getting them and finding out that I've seen 2 or 3 where, my client, I've gone into the boat and I'm saying, don't put money on this boat. It's just, yeah, but I got it on Kijiji for $3,000. It's 34 feet long. It's 34 feet of boat that you're going to have to pay to get rid of. It's just beyond repair at this point. It's going to cost you way more than the value of the boat could ever be,
Okay. So in closing, is there any specific advice you'd give our members?
Try not to look as your surveyor as a bad guy. He's really there to give you an idea of what's going on with your boat. He has to base himself, and we have no choice. We have to base ourselves on some kind of database that says it's got to be like this. And those are the standards that we use. Most of the times we really don't like having to write them down, especially on some of the older boats where they've never had a problem, but the standards demand it now. We don't get very much pleasure out of doing that. It's there because we have to. That's where we're being hired to do. We're supposed to go through the boat, like I say, using whatever knowledge that we have in our domain and whatever guides we have to do a proper survey and give that person the right assessment of his boat at that time. Most owners like it to see it, but they unfortunately have to give that to the insurance companies. And that's where sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated because there's always a little bit of work involved or money to be spent or things like that in that matter. But he's really, really there to help you assess your boat as much as possible, make your boat as safe as it can for you and every passenger on board. And that is, again, I always emphasize that, the most important thing about boating, okay? And most surveyors are also there for, if you want to call it, like aftermarket service. I have my clients calling me all the time saying, Eddie, I want to do this. What's the best way to do it? And I'll go through my ABYC or my TP1332 and take the pictures that I have and I'll send it off to them and say, do it this way. And if you do it this way, you'll be okay. Or if it gets too complicated, I'll suggest they should maybe get better advice from somebody who is more knowledgeable than I am. And that's one thing that, most surveyors do offer their clientele. And mine have throughout the years have always taken advantage of that. And I'm glad they do because they keep in touch with me. It's better for them to call me now and ask me how to do it because they're usually going to call me in 5 years to resurvey their boat anyways. And me having to say, no, that's got to come off. And I know it was there done in the last 5 years because it wasn't there the last time. So every 5 years they're renewing and they're keeping the same boat. And most of them are keeping them in good shape and followed my advice. And it all helps. The bottom line, by keeping your boat up to par is you're going to have a safer boat to navigate. You're going to have probably a better product to sell if you ever want to sell it.
So in a sense, people hire a surveyor hoping to get a good report, but we're really hiring you to find problems.
Yeah.
We're hoping you don't, but if there is a problem, it's better to learn about it and to be able to fix it than to not know.
A lot of problems that we do detect on boats, which are basically hull humidity related, are not usually things that most owners are aware of or really don't know how to control. It's not the easiest thing.
Well, this concludes our podcast. We want to thank Mr. Assaf for joining us and sharing his knowledge. And as always, thank you all for listening.